All right, guys, we're back here on Southeastern 16. Max Barr is back. He sounds wonderful.
Maybe.
Our friends at FanDuel are wonderful. We are presented by FanDuel. And we're going to talk about the action from Wednesday night in SEC basketball. And we will look ahead to a small but notable Thursday slate as we'll talk about the big game of the night. And that is Alabama and Purdue. But, Max, before we jump into that, Game Time Sidekicks, as everyone knows.
Yes.
The thing you want, if you're watching your favorite team play, you want to have something nice to drink out of, head over to GameTimeSidekicks.com. Officially licensed stainless steel drinkware. Every SEC school is there. All the other universities as well. Well, not everyone, but they got 350 more, so pretty much everyone. Everything from stainless steel sippy cups, tumblers, 40-ounce bottles, and the shaker cups, SC16, SC16 for 20% off to our viewers over at GameTimeSidekicks.com. All right. A lot of MIZ in the chat. A lot of Vanderbilt in the chat. Holly's in the chat. I don't know if you heard yesterday, Max Barr, but Holly got engaged to Paul McCartney. So
Okay.
Yeah. So we learned that yesterday here on the channel.
I hope Paul went to the yearly company to get a free sizing kit.
I believe that would have been the best way to read that ad yesterday. I didn't even think about that. But today we may add something in there. Poor Holly. The significant other is just going to be like really getting left out here in favor of Paul McCartney. But we don't make the rules around here. That's how it works. So, all right.
Blake, you said we got Mizzou in the chat. I'm surprised they're up and at 'em this early. Because T-Mac says $2 beer night at Mizzou was a success last night.
Well,
maybe that had a little something to do with that second half runaway there in Columbia.
They're giving them away in the Game Time Sidekicks. We'll never know. But, yes, the Missouri Tigers took care of business last night as they get an 83-60 win over Minnesota. First half, yeah, it was a close game, the spread on this game was, what did it wind up being? It was 2.5, 3.5, something like that.
The spread on the Missouri game?
Wasn't it?
I think it was like 6 or 5.
Oh, I got the wrong game then. Okay. It wound up being 6 or something. Okay. Yeah, well, again, I think it's kind of, if you're a Missouri fan, like that's what you wanted to see because we talked about, I wouldn't say they've been bad, but, like we mentioned, there have been some close calls. Couple games, where you're like, all right, we feel like we could have played better in that spot or whatever. But yeah, I think to play the way they did in the second half, just really pull away, especially after such a slow start, right? They only had like 12 points with 8 minutes to go in the first half and just were not playing well. And yeah, I'm not sure. Carter corrects me here. Minus 7.5 from Missouri. I don't know where that came from on the 2.5. Maybe it was just. I think it was we looked at the lines yesterday when we quickly previewed this game, and I think it was lower than I expected it to be, and for some reason my math dropped it from 7 to 2. So, nonetheless, the Tigers unbeaten still.
So this was my first MIZ full start to finish watch. Finally got to watch a full Missouri game, and boy, that first half, I'm going, where is this rebounding? What is going on? Crocker Johnson had like 8 or 9 rebounds in the first. Man, it was quick. It was quick. He got up to like 7, 8 rebounds. And I'm going, I texted my buddies. We were all watching this game. And I think it was 20. It was in the 20s. And Missouri had just taken a quick lead. And I was like, they're losing the rebounding battle like 18-6 right now. I have no clue how they're winning. Well, you want to know how they're winning? This is the first time since 1983, Blake. 1983, you got to go back to that. Missouri shot better than 50% from the floor in their first 3 games. That's how they're doing it right now. They're running clean offense, getting good quality looks. Hey, I don't want to do too much on the fantasy here, Blake, but Mark Mitchell has been an absolute monster for my fantasy team. 18 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. All right, Mark Mitchell right now with an assist rate on KenPom, just under 19%. He's going for a career high in playmaking this year. Liking what I'm seeing out of this Mizzou squad after. I'm telling you, I don't know how they were winning that first half given the rebounding numbers, Blake. It was so lopsided.
Well, and like we said, that has been a theme. And I'm curious to see how that plays out once we get into the SEC play and such. I know Chris asked the question of is Missouri's depth underrated? I think we were kind of high on Missouri's depth this summer, but I think as always, our question more so becomes like, how does it eventually play out? Because like, there's no surprises this early that you're going to see a lot of these guys playing significant minutes, right? We're used to that in the non-conference from Missouri under Dennis Gates. Like they're going to try out different lineups, they're going to try different rotations, and we mentioned last year it was just like you'd go from one game, oh that guy played 5 minutes, to the next game he played 27, and it's just like I think some of it is just simply situational and who's playing well and riding the hot hand in some of these spots at times. But so I don't know that it's underrated, but I think we are seeing a few of these guys. I think you're starting to see again, like yes, they have the ability to play different lineups. And I think some of that too, we mentioned like whether it was the SEMO game or whatever, that may lead to just having some times where you're looking at it and feeling like, all right, yeah, we're trying some things, we're not playing our best, but we know this is the goal, right? It's to kind of figure some of these things out. So yeah, I mean they got good depth, and that was a big game because all things considered, if you look at the rest of their schedule, other than the Kansas and Illinois games, like they're sitting in a pretty good spot in terms of the rest of their non-conference schedule. That one at Notre Dame, we'll see where they're at for the challenge game on December 2nd. But yeah, just I think it's following some of these stories, like you said, whether it's just looking at the rebounding, the defense certainly I think would like to play better overall, but again, a better second half, and a lot of these things kind of tie into each other. So
a lot of the story is going to be Jacob Cruz coming out of this game. Made 4 big-time threes. Really came on strong, but I want to highlight Sebi Mack. Blake, it was Sebastian Mack in the first half, who I think he was the only double-digit scorer. Mark Mitchell might have caught up to him there at the end of the half, but early, first 10, 15 minutes or so, Sebastian Mack's offense was what kept Missouri in this game when Minnesota started hot. So to kind of add to is the depth underrated? I wouldn't call Sebastian Mack depth. He's a starter, but we don't talk about him much, and he was really important in this game.
Yeah. So again, that's kind of the story I think for Missouri. It does feel like with that depth they have, and you have again, if you do have a Jacob Cruz who's able to go 4 of 6 from 3 and things like that, like it just adds another dimension for this team. And so I think that's a very positive development so far for Missouri. Again, aside from maybe the way they started the game, didn't like it in a couple key areas, but still, I think in the long run, we talked about it. It's like there's not a Caleb Grill on this team probably, but it's the makeup of a different type team, and that's where we again always bring up Jacob Cruz because we're like, if that guy can just come in and give you a couple threes per game, which he has so far in all but one game. 2 of 3 against Howard, 2 of 4 against VMI, 4 of 6 against Minnesota, goes 1 of 3 against SEMO. But I just think that's exactly what they need, and you're starting to see some of those, and this is where like I'll take a team for Kentucky as an example. I'm going to write about this, I think, in one of my sections for my Basket Under Review column this week. I think Kentucky's the kind of team that, based on what I saw against Louisville and elsewhere, I think you've got a team that's still trying to define their roles of who's going to be what, right? Because you've got some guys who feel like, okay, we're trying to be the guy that's the playmaker, and, then I'm trying to figure out how do I fit into the mix, and then there's still injured guys that got to come back and all that, right? I feel like Missouri, at least early on, even despite, like we said, their guys going to play a variety of minutes, but I think you kind of feel like their roles are pretty defined on this team. And I don't know, I just maybe I'm off on that, but I think some of these other teams, especially this early, that's one of the biggest things. And I feel like Missouri's already maybe getting there a little bit and knowing exactly, all right, these are the guys that's their role on this team. They don't have to be this because we need them to be that. And maybe Missouri has a little bit more of that defined outlook right now.
Yeah, and it was so important to kind of get this Minnesota win and have it be a confidence boosting win next 4 games here to round out November, where you have basically 2 full weeks to get Anor Boateng, Trent Burns, and Trent Pierce healthy. Prairie View A&M, South Dakota, South Carolina State, Cleveland State. Cleveland State at 267 is the highest analytical ranking of those 4 teams. So get that big home win against your high major. And hey, I will say this about Minnesota. This is not the past 2-3 years of Minnesota. Nico Medved is going to have this Minnesota team. Maybe give him a year, but this is a new Minnesota. Do not just write off Minnesota. Okay. I really respect him as a coach. But Missouri, you got 4 kind of bye games here against lower ranked mid majors to get the rest of the crew healthy.
Yeah, so I agree. I think Minnesota's going to be fine eventually under him. Great coach. So,
yeah.
All right. So the Tigers get their win, as we said, have plenty of room to work with moving forward based on their upcoming schedule over the next couple weeks. So should be 8-0 heading into the game against Notre Dame in the SEC-ACC Challenge. I think you'd be disappointed if you're not, in all honesty. So, all right. Other results from last night. Tennessee gets a 99-66 win over North Florida in a game where Tennessee's favored by, 42.5, whatever it wound up being. Plus 4, north of 40, which you just don't see that very often, but we know Matthew Driscoll, no longer the coach at North Florida, a program that's kind of rebuilding for sure there. But, yeah, thoughts on this one, Max? The Vols just kind of, pretty much what you would expect in this game. I know Sam Smith probably not thrilled that they got off to a little bit of a tiny slow start here. A little bit frustrating early on, but even though the Vols couldn't cover the spread, they still won it by 33. And the Max Barr special, JP Estrella, 23-10 in 20 minutes of play. And then not a surprise elsewhere, your other 2 guys leading the way. Jacoby Gillespie with 21 and 7 assists, and then you have Nate Ament, 19-9.
Number 1 offensive rebounding team in the country right now, 53.1%. I mean, we've only played 3 games, and Mercer at 179th is the highest rated for the 3 Tennessee opponents. But still, that's probably not going to fall too far off. Going to be one of the best rebounding teams in the nation this year. Blake, do you have any idea who the number 1 offensive rebounder in the country right now is?
Is it JP Estrella?
Wow. Sometimes I don't know how you know these things.
Man.
JP Estrella, 32.6% offensive rebound rate. That is number 1 in the country. He had 6 against North Florida, 6 against Northern Kentucky, 4 against Mercer, played 20 minutes each of those 3 games. So right now for Tennessee, if you want to, harp on the offense, this, that, you got one thing that you can boast about, that you are currently number 1 in the whole country in offensive rebounding right there. Come on. How about this front court, Blake?
Speaking of that, thoughts on Jalen Carey to this point?
Interesting. You were talking about Missouri knowing their roles. Seems like Jalen Carey is still trying to find exactly where he fits in here.
Yeah, and I think I think we both had Tennessee ranked as our second best front court in the SEC. Did we not?
Yes.
I think we did.
Yep.
And I think that's where we mentioned, like, just having the depth and, talking about, we know Akpara is going to be the guy right there in the middle. And, the familiarity with Estrella was going to make him an obvious choice, I think, in this rotation. And then, of course, Cade Phillips, kind of a similar thing. And so, yeah, it's like so far, Carey played 16 minutes against Mercer. Now, keep in mind, some of these games are blowouts. You can't always judge on that. But 16 against Mercer, played 10 against Northern Kentucky, and then plays 9 last night with 3 fouls. But he plays 9 minutes last night, but he has 6 points and 6 rebounds. So it's like, I don't know. And I think you're right. I think it's just eventually that adjustment process and kind of getting, more acclimated maybe to how they're going to do things. And we know how they're going to do things, right? You have to defend, you have to be, that guy first, and then everything else comes along with it. So just maybe a storyline to keep in mind here moving forward with Tennessee, just to see kind of how that shakes out. So anything else on the Vols before we continue on?
Yeah, we got a look at the Tennessee backcourt where Bishop Boswell was out with a right foot injury. Barnes said he's day to day. So what did we get instead of Bishop? We got 15 minutes of Ethan Berg, 14 minutes of Troy Henderson, 13 minutes of Amari Abram, 9 minutes of Amari Evans, and 5 from Masamba. So basically, it was a kind of a tight rotation there between Berg, Henderson, and Abram, kind of rotating. I don't to right now, Blake. I don't think any one of those kind of two guard, whatever you want to call them, next to Gillespie. I don't think anyone has really risen above the rest. Probably still trying to figure that out. I know Barnes said that there was a piece out on Ethan Berg about how he's been adjusting, and how the expectations are still pretty high for him. But other than that, I know Sam said that I think North Florida was short enough for Chris Lee to play on their team. So you got that.
Well,
One more thing, though, Blake. Nate Ament, currently 7th in the KenPom Player of the Year rankings, 19 points. He had 4 offensive rebounds, 5 defensive, 5 assists to only 2 turnovers, 1 block, and 2 steals. If you're still going with the trendy offseason, I'm down on Nate Ament trend, I think it's time to reverse course on that.
yeah, Chris asked who will lead Tennessee in scoring. I'd probably go with Nate Ament at this point. Gillespie will be close, but I just think Ament's going to be their go-to guy in most situations, just based on what we've seen so far. So I'm going to go with him for sure. All right, moving on to the next one. And Max, I'm going to throw you to this game because you're not going to believe this, but Barry the Wonder Dog is wanting out. He's feisty this morning, and I'm just going to need to put him out the door here. But how about Texas? Let's go to Texas next. And then the reason I'm saving another team is because I have more close thoughts on that one. But Texas 93, Fairleigh Dickinson 58.
Yeah, this is not the FDU that beat Purdue. Not even close. Fairleigh Dickinson right now is ranked 352nd out of 365. So it was good to see a Texas absolute just wire to wire. I mean, they started slow, but wire to wire pretty much victory. I cannot stop raving about Voki Titus. I thought he was good coming into the year, but gosh, he's just looked fantastic. Goes for 19 points, perfect from the floor, 8 of 8. Does miss 3 free throws, 3 of 6 from the free throw line. But man, each game I've come away more and more impressed with Voki Titus. I think there's going to be some games at the Moody Center this year where we come away and we saying, man, Voki Titus was the difference around the rim there. You know, Bobbity Blah tried, they were getting downhill and then they're running into Voki Titus, and he was altering shots and stuff like that. And then, when he's not on the floor, you got Lucina Traore coming in getting 10 rebounds in 18 minutes. Traore's back. Honestly, not much to take away. Just satisfied with a clean win. And finally, Tremont Mark is back to aggressive. Tremont Mark 7 of 7 from 2-point range, gets 2 threes in there. Anytime that Tremont Mark should be leading this team and scoring every game. I know Jordan Pope can fill it up. I know Swain can fill it up. But when Tremont Mark is efficient on offense, that's when I think this team's going to be at their best.
Yeah, I think the questions we had with Texas were all about the front court coming into the season and not knowing exactly maybe what their preference was going to be on how they rotated these guys in and out. But I think it's pretty clear now that they've got options to work with, and both those guys, Voki Titus and Traore, like they're going to play a huge role this season. And I think that's been the most positive thing I've seen is just kind of already having a pretty clear idea of what that's going to look like for them. And like you said, an aggressive Tremont Mark, that's going to be very helpful. And I think Texas may have some underrated depth because I think we're seeing some of these guys make an impact that we really didn't talk a lot about this summer. So, yeah, I think, again, tough opening game against Duke, but Texas has got some interesting ones, as we said, the rest of the non-conference, Virginia, UConn, games like that. So, those are big opportunities, and I think they're going to be – they feel like an NCAA tournament team. It's just kind of I'm not sure how high their ceiling is, but I think they're a team that feels like they're gonna be in the field, and they just kind of got enough of the pieces, I think, to get there. So there you have it. All right, let's go to Vanderbilt. Um, so I was there. I went and watched this one. And Vanderbilt got a 92-62 win against Eastern Kentucky. Um, just takeaways for me. Tyler Harris, man, is just he's a dude. Like, I mean, he is just like that guy. And I think that's where sometimes we always say it's like you just watch people in person and you can get
Mhm.
kind of a little bit of a different feel of just some of those things you can't always catch when you're just watching, on TV or whatever. And he is just such a smooth player. And I think that again, when you look at the long term outlook of this Vanderbilt team, like I think he's going to be the guy that just stands out the most. But I say that, and I'm like, Duke Miles played great. Tyler Tanner just did Tyler Tanner things. McLaughlin hit some big shots. Like there, and I think it was no different than what we've been saying, right? This is just a team that I think realistically, Duke Miles, Devin McLaughlin, Tyler Nickel, Tyler Tanner, Jalen Washington, Frankie Collins, Tyler Harris, aka Okariga, like all those guys can probably score 15 or more on any given night. And I'm like, I don't know how many teams have that. And I also don't know how many teams have pretty much an entire rotation that can step out and make a 3-point shot and be a threat from three. I think it's going to be a nightmare for teams to guard them. And I know Eastern Kentucky was outmatched here, but I'm telling you, man, I just think that there's nothing I saw last night up close that makes me want to change my mind at all on this Vanderbilt team.
How was the atmosphere? How was the atmosphere, Blake?
Well, the atmosphere wasn't that great. I'll be honest. Like it's one of those where it's like it's a night game on a Wednesday. Listen, the people that were there, it was plenty of excitement because they played well. But once we get into those big type games, right? Once you start to get some big ones, it will pick up. Like there's no question. Like that SMU game, I think you'll have a pretty nice crowd for the SMU game. The other one's TBD because look, the rest of their home schedule in non-conference play: Arkansas Pine Bluff on Saturday, Texas Southern, Central Arkansas, and New Haven. New Haven, Max. Like so, I didn't even I don't think you're gonna have the greatest crowds for those games, but look, once we get to SEC play, that place is gonna be rocking, especially if they're as good as we think they're gonna be. So
Vanderbilt up to 12th in the analytics. 12th. They are one, maybe two games where they beat the analytical projection away from being a top 10 team in the country. Let that sink in. They have the 6th rated offensive efficiency, 39th defense. The only thing that because it has just been, for the past 6 months, we've just absolutely loved Vanderbilt. The only thing that I'm going to hit the brake on is we haven't seen them face an elite offensive front court. And that may be my one question. And we've seen, McLaughlin just played the 5 all of last year. Like they're going to be plenty capable, but Yigatolu, and that's pretty much the only major offensive 5 that Vanderbilt's going to face. But I could see maybe down the road, we say, okay, Vanderbilt might have a little bit of an Achilles heel here. If they face a really good back to the basket offensive 5, it might cause some defensive issues just because that was like our main concern. But other than that, is there anything that you could be semi worried about with this Vanderbilt team? I mean, they've just looked, I think, what was the word you texted me? Machine? They've looked like a machine.
yeah, I'll be honest. And there were even times during that game where I don't think they're playing that well, and they still won by 30. And as Holly brought up, against a team that scored 122 in their opener against Midway. Don't forget that, Max. But Eastern Kentucky lost by 8 to Western Kentucky at home a couple of days ago. And I'm like, that's not a terrible Western Kentucky team. So Eastern Kentucky could not make shots early. That was kind of the story. They just came out and it was brick after brick. And they, got themselves in a bit of a hole, and Vanderbilt was just able to eventually, just kind of outrun them. But yeah, so I think that's something else to keep in mind. We've still not seen Mason Nicholson this season. Thought Jalen Washington, like you said, once we start to, maybe get into, more physical front courts in the SEC. We'll see what that looks like, but I think McLaughlin, no issue with the physicality, although we mentioned like fouls and stuff. These are kind of things that every team deals with, but I think they're at this point. I'm starting to kind of position my thinking of I think I'm going to be more surprised than not if they finish outside the maybe even like the top 6 in the SEC. I just think I'd be surprised. I think that's where they're at. So,
Justin, or any Vanderbilt diehards in the chat, if we have any more update on Nicholson other than illness, would love to know. Would love to know, because that is a little. I mean, he's going to be a big part of this team come conference play. So,
there you go.
Good point.
All right. Elsewhere, South Carolina beat the Blue Hose Presbyterian.
Knew that was coming.
Yeah. But hey, I mean, they did it in a nice fashion, as we mentioned. That was, I don't want to say it was necessarily a tricky game, but that spread was a little bit lower.
It's like 15.
Than some may have thought. Now, I think it's kind of one where, again, with South Carolina, I think you're just looking for what are the things that are separating them from what we saw last season. And, whenever we talk to Lamont Paris, whenever that was, a month and a half ago or something now, I think you're starting to see some of those things. And it's, we knew it was that the guard play was going to be a big part of that discussion. But like, these are the kind of games where I look at it and I'm like, okay, hey, Miles Studi can build off of something like this, right? Guys playing a lot, but it's still starting to, just knocking down a couple threes. That's good. Like, you've seen him do that in these games so far this season. Okay, that's become a trend. Like, all right, he's able to knock down a couple shots. I know he went 2 of 8 in this game, but like, those are the things. They've got to have that for South Carolina to be successful, right? They need somewhat of that 3-point element. Which when Grant Polk came in and said, I'm going to give you the 3-point element, I'm going to go 4 of 4 from 3. And so I think, look, those are the things that you can build on is, all right, here's one of the things that can be different about this South Carolina team. And we said, I think the guard play, when you have a 6'9" guard, like, that's going to be a nice thing to have, just having a guy like that can do all the things that Mike can. And so, yeah, like Jordan Butler, had 11 points, 7 boards here. I know he fouled out, but like, there are things I think we're seeing with South Carolina that you can build off of, and does kind of seem to be a little bit different than what we saw last season. And we can point back to that game a couple of days ago against Southern Miss, where it's like, that's the kind of game they probably lose last year, but they found a way to win, and maybe that's just the Meechie Johnson effect. I don't know.
Yeah, and don't be fooled by this 81-61 final. With 9:32 left, it was 73-39. South Carolina was absolutely destroying them. And then the last, 8 minutes or so, they let up a little bit. Do have a little bit of an update here from Lamont Paris. Isan Doko, he has an injury, not long-term. He's day-to-day. And then Norden Kapich, who after the first game, we were like, holy smokes, Kapich might be kind of the key here to this offense, spreading it out on the perimeter. He has a deep thigh bruise, and he was not planning on playing Kapich last night, but then he was available and got Kapich in for 4 minutes?
Four minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So dealing with multiple front court injuries right now, but none of them, Lamont Paris says none of them are long-term.
Yeah. And that too, I mean, the front court with them, I think that's going to probably decide a lot this season. I think their guard play will be good enough to keep them right there. I just think it's, how the front court plays out will probably be the biggest thing that either propels them forward, or maybe it's something that winds up holding them back a little bit. But I'm impressed with the guards, and I think, again, and we've talked about Eli Ellis a lot. Like, he didn't even make a 3 in this game, but still has 9 points, 5 assists. They've got more versatility in their attack, and I think that's going to wind up being something that, is going to be helpful for South Carolina, and I think it's going to help them win more SEC games this year. So, yeah.
Opponent probably has a lot to do with it, but little defensive thing to monitor here, Blake, for South Carolina. Right now, second in the country in opponent 3-point attempts. They are limiting the perimeter opportunities. It's been A&T, Southern Miss, and Presbyterian, but still something to monitor there.
They play Radford next Tuesday. And Radford just went to North Carolina. That was a couple nights ago. Lost by 15. But I think, like, again, you obviously need to win that game. But then you've got, talk about like building NCAA tournament resumes. Like, South Carolina's got several games like Butler, Northwestern, Virginia Tech. Obviously, if you win at Clemson, that's very helpful. But those are the kind of swing games that, again, can determine whether you're right there in the conversation. Come February, right? And so I just think, yeah, like these are going to be pretty important games coming up over the next week and a half or so for
Yeah.
South Carolina. So, all right, there you go. That was Thursday night slate. Before we get into some thoughts on Alabama, Purdue, and everything else you guys want to talk about, let's tell you about the Yearly Company. Some members of the chat have just gotten engaged to Paul McCartney.
Yes.
Other members of the chat are trying to get engaged or trying to buy something really nice, real nice, Clark, for their significant other. Nashville-based fine jewelry company. They're called the Yearly Company. And they're built on tradition, designed for meaning. Each piece handcrafted from solid 14-karat gold and natural gemstones, made to measure for a perfect fit, backed by a lifetime guarantee. Every Yearly Company bangle custom size, so you got to know that size, and to do it, you need that sizing kit, and you're going to get it complimentary from our friends at the Yearly Company. 100% off at checkout using the code SC16KIT. SC16KIT over at the Yearly Company. Get it. It's free. Complimentary sizing kit. Get it now, folks, over at the Yearly Company. Rockform, ROKFORM.com, the world's strongest magnetic phone case, extreme protection, super strong magnets, rock lock, secure mounting. The code over there is SEC25, SEC25 for 25% off over at our friends at Rockform. All right, now we need to go. Oh, okay, so Paul's all right. So we've got confirmation that Paul did get the free sizing kit, Max.
Yes.
So you were very worried about that, I know. So
there we go.
There you have it. Okay. Tonight's game is multiple.
Yes.
LSU's going to host Florida International. Nothing against the Tigers, but I think all eyes are going to be on Alabama hosting Purdue. TKR is going to play, and that is obviously a significant development for Purdue. Alabama's coming off the big win at St. John's. And Max, this is a heavyweight showdown here between the Tide and the Boilermakers. Remember, they played last year on November 15th, and it was Purdue getting an 87-78 win in that one.
Yeah, TKR, good to go. Keaton Bristow, highly doubtful still.
Yeah, I don't think he's playing. Yeah.
Yep. So that'll be potentially pretty important given how TKR performed against the Tide last year. Also, no, I'm going to call him Big O. No Collins O. I always struggle with that last name, but you could call him the third string center behind Sherrell and Williamson. But still, in a game like this, in the second half, if you have a little bit of foul trouble, it's nice to have a 6'11", 270 to go throw out there with Clough and TKR or Jacobson, whoever it is. So just know going into the game, Alabama, not on the front line, but in the depth there in the front court, a little bit banged up.
Yep. Well, in this game, I don't want to say overreaction, but listen, we were thrilled with how Alabama played at St. John's. And I think it's like if you want to establish yourself as one of the top teams in the country, that's one way to do it is going and win that game against St. John's. But another way to do it is by beating the team that for the longest time had the best odds to win the national championship and are getting, an absolute stud back in the lineup here in this game in TKR. And so I think, and look, the line right now at FanDuel, Max, is
3.5?
what? 3.5?
It was 3.5
right now?
Like an hour ago.
It's 2.5 now. So maybe the TKR news is starting to trickle in a little bit for some people. It is 2.5 down to, and the over-under is at 174.5 in this one. So that is at least notable. And I'm not surprised, again, because I think Rothstein tweeted out the TKR news and all that, and sometimes stuff like that's going to swing once people know for sure who's available and who's not. But, I mean, like we said, I think Alabama's guards were about as good as it gets when you see the entire group playing together. And I think that's going to be the thing where if Alabama comes out, it's a home game, shots fall. You got LeBaron Philon playing like an SEC Player of the Year candidate. But then it's just for Purdue, it's trying to guard the other guys and figuring out exactly how you try to match up with this Alabama team. Um, so I think that's certainly something, Max, when it comes to seeing how this is going to play out. I mean, what so far? How many threes Purdue shot this year? Um, I mean, they're getting such a large percentage of their points so far from three, right, through those first couple games. So I think the three ball will be there in this game, and that could be, in games like that, it can make for kind of a volatile result because you just have two teams that are going to, obviously put up shots from outside, and it'll kind of be fascinating to see how it plays out. Although Alabama, again, some of the reason why, as we mentioned before, they won at St. John's wasn't really just the three. It was just their ability and their guards' ability just to kind of attack, find the right spot, and I think that's going to be just as important here in this game.
Yeah, I think tempo is going to have a major impact. Clearly, anytime you're playing Purdue, right now their defensive tempo, their average defensive possession length ranks 362nd out of 365. They want to slow Alabama down as much as possible. Last year, the amount of possessions in that Purdue game was 68. That was the second slowest of the entire season for Alabama last year. So 68 possessions in last year's game against St. John's, 84 possessions. So I think KenPom has 74 possessions projected. I think if you get above 74, Alabama wins this game. If you are below 74, that's because Purdue was winning most of the game, controlling the flow. I think that might be the story of the whole game, is who's got that lead at halftime and who can play a little bit more comfortably on offense. Because if Alabama has that 5-point lead, the crowd is behind them, and Purdue is forced to play catch up, I think that favors Alabama much, much, much more. Whoever's making shots early here, and it's tough to break down because it is two extremely high volume 3-point shooting teams, leads to a lot of different outcomes. But whoever makes those, whoever has that 10-0 kill shot in that first half, Blake, that might be the difference here, just given how much the tempo difference is in this one.
Well, Big Baller Brett went where I was about to go to, and I think that's where, if you're Alabama, we've talked about the front court a lot, but Oscar Clough, has gotten off to a good start. Obviously, a guy who can just, he can impact the game in a big way. Shocker that Purdue has a center that can impact the game in a big way. So I think it is kind of one. We mentioned Bowen kind of answering the challenge. Obviously, Aiden Sherrill. I think, those are two huge elements for Alabama in this game. Is you obviously need those two guys to play really well, but at the same time, you've got to understand that you do have someone like Oscar Clough who is gonna impact the game, and that maybe makes a few shots in the lane a little bit harder than they would be against some of these other type teams. But remember too, Alabama just played an excellent front court in St. John's, a different one with Mitchell and Edgeworth, but still, they were able to find enough there. But this is kind of it's a different type matchup.
A little bit of a switch up from last year's matchup. Purdue didn't have the 7'4" big man Daniel Jacobson. He'll be available in this one. Played 21 minutes against Evansville, 12 against Oakland. He had 3 blocks in 21 minutes, or 3 blocks in 12 minutes last time out, 2 blocks in 21 minutes. If Clough will probably start the game here, but if Alabama's guards are able to get to the rim kind of with ease and there's not too much rim protection, we could see extended minutes from Jacobson just for that rim protection aspect. But then that changes the way that Purdue plays offense. Jacobson's not as efficient rebounding wise as Clough's numbers are. So that'll be a little bit of a storyline, who's on the floor more, Clough or Jacobson, and are they going for offense or defense? But if that's the matchup there, Blake, Clough versus Sherrill, that means it's Bull Bowen on TKR. That's a TKR 30 bomb waiting to happen.
Something else to keep in mind on the Purdue side, they gave up 20 offensive rebounds to Evansville, gave up 12 offensive rebounds to Oakland.
Yep.
And I think that's where, if you're Alabama and you think about how many threes could be attempted, long rebounds, those kind of things, like I think this is, if we circle, and I know it was maybe Alan asked the matchup to watch, I'm going to switch that and say if there's one stat that after the game you look up and you're like, that defined the game, it may be second chance points. And it may be one
Mm.
of those where if Alabama can get enough second chance opportunities, because again, Purdue's gonna defend. Obviously, they're a better offensive team, but like they're still gonna do some things defensively. That probably will make it a little tough for Alabama to get the exact shots they want. But getting those second chance points in a game like this, I think is crucial. Just because again, you're talking about differences in approach with the tempo and those kind of things. But like, I just think that may be it, because so far Purdue has really struggled there in terms of giving up those extra opportunities on the offensive side. And if you give Alabama extra opportunities in Tuscaloosa, I think you're in trouble.
Last year, who was the hero? The freshman, CJ Cox, hits three threes in the second half out of nowhere.
Yeah.
In a star-studded game like this where everyone's going to be talking about Braden Smith, TKR, LeBaron Philon going for SEC Player of the Year, I bet you for Purdue, is it Jack Benter, this freshman, that's been getting extended minutes with TKR out. He's got a nice 3-point shot. Is it Amari Allen? Is it London Jemison? That comes in with some, if Alabama gets in some foul trouble, you got to have Amari Allen playing defense on TKR. TKR backs him down. Amari Allen stands his ground. Crowd goes wild. I think we're going to have a scenario like that where both teams here kind of have underrated depth. And last year, it happened to be a freshman on the home court. Blake, Alabama's got the talent with these freshmen to maybe pull off some of the same home court magic.
Well, and on the flip side of that, let's also, if we want to push this in Purdue's favor in one area, like that, the big three, knowing the TKR is playing, the big three have played in a lot of these kind of games, man. They have been through this grind. They have been in these spots, and this is an older team. And again, adding Clough to the mix, I know, it's a little bit different. He's not played in these kind of games specifically, but he's an older guy. And so you've got a bunch of older dudes here going on the road feeling like, hey, in a certain sense, maybe feeling like they're a little disrespected in this spot, just because, it hasn't been that pretty at times. But again, I don't think you can discount getting your guy like TKR back who can just completely take over a game. And we saw that plenty last season. So it's a fantastic matchup. And, again, I'm curious to see where this line settles at. Because, boy, we talk about tracking lines this week. I don't think we're going to have a Kentucky-Louisville scenario, but I think, we're definitely going to maybe see where this thing winds up. -2.5 still over at FanDuel in this one. All right, which way are you leaning on this, Max?
Well, you mentioned something that, the big three of Purdue has been there and done that, and they have. I mean, they've played in, this group has played in so many games. However, I was wondering, we try to look at trends and different stuff like that, look a little deeper. I was wondering, what is Purdue's non-conference true road game record against a high major? That's a lot of different variables, right? Non-conference,
Ooh,
true.
I know where you're going. Okay,
True road game.
That's a great point. Yep. Okay.
Yep. So non-conference true road game against a high major, basically just scheduling a tough game on the road in the non-conference.
Yeah.
They're all seniors. Braden Smith, Lawyer, TKR, they're all seniors. In their whole career, they've only done this 2 times. Last year, they played a true road game at Marquette, and they lost by 20. No, 18. Lost by 18.
Yeah.
In 2024, they did not play a true road game against a high major in the non-conference. And then you have to go back to their freshman season when they played at Florida State, and they won by 10. But that Florida State team was ranked 209th in Ken Pom. I mean, there's about 100 mid-majors that were better than that Florida State team at the time. So you could make the argument that Braden Smith, Lawyer, and TKR, this group of seniors, has only done this true road game in a hostile environment in the non-conference one time their whole career. You could make that argument.
Yeah. That's where, like, you forget, like, they played so many neutral court games.
Yeah.
Or, games that aren't in the other people's actual gym. That's a good point. Like I didn't even, but once you went there, I was like, okay, it's starting to click now. Yeah, they've just played so many neutral court games, or like even who was it? They played. Was that Auburn? Was that in Birmingham last year?
Yep.
And just yeah, got it taken to them by them. So interesting nugget there. If you're out there
Interesting.
saying, you know what, I'm gonna head over to FanDuel and get my money in. There's a stat maybe you should know. We were gonna do our official prediction video on this morning. I'll be honest. Again, Max has been sick. We just got behind.
Yeah,
Didn't get a
sorry,
chance
guys.
to get to it. But we'll make our official picks here. How about that?
Yep. Yep.
Max, I'm going to tell you, I hate how much I like Alabama in this game, which is not good for Big Baller Brad and the Alabama fans in the chat, and Brock and all the others. I hate how much I'm in on the Tide on this one, but I don't know.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And so I'm gonna be going my official pick here. I'm gonna take the underdog here in Purdue. It's more of just like a kind of a gut feeling. I think it's gonna be super close. If this is a jinx that helps the Crimson Tide, I'm at your service here. But I don't know, kind of a gut feeling. You're in kind of a weird letdown spot after the big MSG win. I feel like a lot of people think, ooh, Alabama just beat a really good team. Purdue isn't all that. Purdue on the road. Road teams haven't really won a lot. Let me go bet on Alabama, and the spread's only 2.5. I don't know. I got a weird little funny business going on. I'll go Purdue.
Well, look, we there is a difference sometimes in our picks and our picks against the spread, and that's where like I'm thinking, okay, I don't love that it's moved down to 2.5, but if it gets backed up to 3.5, I think I've got to take Purdue in that instance when it comes to just the spread aspect. But like I said, I do hate how much I like Alabama in the spot, and I think it's. But you know what? That's exactly what the folks in Vegas want me to think because, hook, line, and sinker. I bought in, but I just don't think you can underestimate with Purdue here. Like we said, remember, like they have been without a key piece of the puzzle here, and I just think we cannot forget the kind of impact he's gonna. Because somebody's just gonna look at the Oakland game and be like, oh well, Purdue only beat Oakland by 10. They were down, had a poor start and all this other stuff. I just think you gotta remember they're getting a big hog in the wheel back here. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a great game.
Where
Should
are you
live up
going?
to the hype. Oh, I'm going Alabama.
You're going Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like I said though, that spread though, if I were betting this game, which you should never ever follow my betting advice. If I were, unless of course you just go with the method I always do, and that's the emotional hedge, which to this point this season is now 3-1 after Kentucky really did not help the other night. They really hooked me in on that one. But if you go with the emotional hedge, I would pick Purdue on the spread. But
Also, this is just kind of my natural rebel coming out. No big road team has won in a game yet. Home team has won every time in prime time, and so it's just the rebel in my DNA is just going, all right, let's go with the road team.
Well, that's not gonna. That's like you hate it sometimes because you see some of those trends and you're like,
Yeah,
everybody's like, oh, well, no one's won yet, so I got to keep picking. No, eventually that trend gets broken, and
yeah.
somebody's gonna break it. It's just a matter who's it gonna be, and you could pick worse teams to do that than Purdue, like we said, who for the longest time the odds-on favorite to win the national championship, and as it stands right now, they have the third best odds over at FanDuel. Those have shifted a little bit since the Kentucky Louisville game, by the way. Houston's plus 850, Duke's plus 1100, Purdue plus 1200, Louisville and Kentucky now both plus 1600. So is UConn. Alabama's still down there at plus 2000. If they win this game, I'm telling you, if you want to get your Alabama futures, your national championship, if you're like, hey, I'm going to throw a little money down, bet responsibly, folks, but yeah, that's going up after tonight if they win. So you better get it now if you want that one, because that number's not going to hold at plus 2,000, I don't think. So,
Is
all right,
Houston the nation's leader for national championship odds?
Houston, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I don't want to say it's a sizable, but like they're plus 850 and Duke plus 1100. So there's a little bit of a
Yeah, I
gap
don't
there.
agree with that at all.
So,
I think it's a little tighter right now. How do you know that? How do you even know there's that separation?
again, a lot of this is that's why there's the only way I would do a futures bet right now is if I were again going like on a team like Alabama where I'm like I see their stock is about to skyrocket, and I'm going to go ahead and just take a flyer on them now. but like I would not be betting on like the favorites right now because I just think like there's going to be so
Yeah.
much movement on some of those teams at the top.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's more identifying the teams like Arizona plus 2,500. Probably take that now before it goes up. I thought it maybe would have went up a little bit higher, to be honest with you. So I don't know. And if you're a believer in back-to-back for Florida, they're dropping. And that's why, again, like no need to get in early on some of these because you have a team like Florida that's not looked great out of the gate. That number is going to keep being more kind of intriguing for you if you think the Gators eventually figure it out. So there you go. Vanderbilt, by the way, plus 5,000. They're moving up.
Where are the Zags?
The Zags over at FanDuel are currently.
Man, I've been liking what I've been seeing from the Zags. How do you not?
Yeah, they're plus 1,700. They're one of those two that are kind of tricky because when they get to conference play, it's like, of course, they still have Alabama, still have Kentucky, still have UCLA, and Oregon too.
Yeah.
But like, that's the thing. Like, once they get to conference play, I can't imagine there's going to be much of a shift. So you've really got to figure out what you think they're going to be over the next 3 weeks or so.
If you're going to get in on the Zags, get in now.
Yeah, it's going to be if they beat Alabama, they beat Kentucky and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Speaking of which, we may have something special for the Gonzaga Kentucky game. We won't spoil that just yet, but we'll get to that eventually. All right. 2-minute warning. If you guys have anything you want to chat about, let us know. There was a lot of chat GPT going on by SC Scout Guy and Holly and others trying to identify the SUNY Cortland Red Dragons mascot on Max's shirt. Now, Max has discussed this before. He's worn this shirt before, but maybe it didn't register with everyone. So
it's where I went to college. SUNY Cortland Red Dragons, baby.
So
if you look up any play-by-play from my stint there, you'll hear yours truly.
Currently no odds on the Red Dragons to win the national championship, but if FanDuel gets those in, we will let you know. So, yeah, that's where things stand right now. So, all right, drop your super chats. Any questions, comments you have on the way out, let us know. As we said, the next time we chat here, we'll kind of let you know. We're not exactly sure what our schedule is going to be as it stands right now, but yeah, looking ahead to the weekend, 5 games tomorrow. I don't think a lot of significance for most of those games tomorrow. Georgia Tech's interesting just because we've been kind of seeing the Bulldogs. Their stock seems to be trending up. Not the best Saturday slate, which is, you don't like that. But Sunday, you got 2 games I think that are really worth watching on Sunday.
Yep.
That's Auburn and Houston and Florida and Miami. So I'm sure we will likely do our preview for Auburn-Houston at some point in the next couple of days. That's a big one. And so, yeah, there's that. So, all right. If you guys don't have anything, no super chats, come on, one super chat. Come on, guys. We got like a streak going here. This is like the Cal Ripken streak. We've had a super chat in every single basketball in-season stream we've done for the last millennium. Who's going to be the person that drops the super chat? Let's find out. But by the way, Alex, yes, we did talk about JP Estrella.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
We talked about JP there. So, and Elijah asks, says UConn plays BYU. That's certainly a game to keep an eye on as well. Don asks, is Miami good? They were horrible last year. Different regime coaching-wise.
Yeah.
I think Miami, I'm not saying they're going to win the ACC. They're off to a 3-0 start, and they're simply playing better. But, yes, they are much improved from last year. So, I think Florida
wins. Have you seen what Malik Reneau is doing?
This
guy's a monster right now.
I don't want to overreact, but I think Miami's going to be a tough team in the ACC. I do. So
they've played Jacksonville, Bethune-Cookman, and Stetson, so not the toughest competition. But Indiana transfer Malik Reneau right now, 6'9", 240, is averaging 21.5 points per game. He's had 20 or more in each of the first 3 games, and he's playing next to big ol' 6'11", 270 Ernest Uday.
Mm-hmm.
It's a physical team.
Yeah. The streak continues.
There we go.
Courtesy of Big Gator EJ. $5 super chat. We appreciate Big Gator EJ keeping the streak going. You guys keep the streak going here of tremendous interaction and engagement. Speaking of engagements, no, I'm just kidding. All right, we're out of here.
Huh.
Paul McCartney's got things to do, and yeah, we're gonna go check out some more stuff here as we get ready for these upcoming games. And we appreciate you guys as always. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well. And yeah, good to see Ryan in here, Nico Medved. Yeah,
Hey.
I think Nico's gonna be fine. He's gonna get them on the right track. And you know, it's not always an easy, quick fix, but he's gonna be fine. So, all right, we appreciate you guys as always. Subscribe, turn on your notifications, hit that like button on your way out, helps the channel. And yeah, football coming up here soon, half hour, an hour, something like that. Members, if you're in football, if you're part of our membership tier, they got a football live show coming up, previewing the weekend. So check that out as well. And again, guys, we appreciate you watching as always. Check out our friends at FanDuel. And thanks as always for watching. We'll talk to you soon at Southeastern 16, presented by FanDuel.